We may never know why Karens are such a joyless drain on society, but we can deal with them strategically if we're ever so unlucky to have to do business with them. Stay tuned.
What do you think I say when I go to the feed store in town? Oh, now, Wally, give me a bag of that effing pig feed and 10 pounds that bitchly cow corn. And in the bank, do I tell Mrs. Bollinger, oh, here's one big bastard of a check. Give me some of your Christing money? There, look there. See what you made me do?
This is the Cleveland Real Estate Investor Podcast. On this episode, Mike Reilly and Lindsey Reilly share their strategies on how they handle Karens, or Kevins, in the business. You have good customers and you have not good customers. Today, Mike and Lindsey help us navigate how to deal with the not so good ones. But first, a word from our sponsor.
If you've been listening to this podcast, then you understand or should understand the pitfalls of investing in Cleveland real estate. Say you're looking for an investment property to rent, and these are the things that could happen and often do. You overpay for a house, and it's in the ghetto. Then you find that it's a money pit with endless surprise repairs. Your hapless property manager, who may be the brother-in-law of the realtor, gets a tenant who after 3 months stops paying the rent. Then the toilet explodes, and you have nobody to repair it because, guess what? The property manager is not answering the phone. Yep, that's the ugly side of the Cleveland real estate market. But we have a solution. Buy one of our properties. It's been inspected. It's been vetted. It's in a rock-solid part of town. It comes with a gold star tenant paying top dollar rent, and we manage it. Call us at 216-371-8160 if you're interested. Hi, everybody. We've got another unusual podcast here. We're going to talk about what's it like dealing with a Karen or a Kevin in your rental property. And with me this time is Lindsey Reilly, who runs the property sector. Good afternoon, Lindsey.
Good afternoon, Mike. Nice to be here and joining you today.
All right, so let's relive some of the drama that's been happening over the last couple months. We ran into a perfect storm of sorts at one of our managed properties where we had a tenant, a short-term tenant. She was there for about a month, and we get a call that some of the lights weren't working at the house. And we went over there on Thursday, sent one of our guys over there on Thursday. They flipped one of the breaker boxes and all was good. And then, of course, the next day, the lights were back out again. Well, it turned out that there was a loose wire somewhere in the wall. So whenever a combination of a couple of lights were turned up, it would, trip the box. But we didn't know that at the time. All we knew was that Friday was coming and there was about 4 lights that weren't working. Both bedroom overhead lights, a bathroom light, and a small hall overhead light. The outlets all worked. Basically, 90% of the power was working. So after our electrician went over with one of our top guys on Friday, and they tried to figure out what was going on, it was decided that we were going to put a few stand-up lamps in, plug them in, and so we tasked one of our young guys to go over there at the end of the day on Friday, and he got just abused by the tenant who had turned into a Karen of sorts. And of course, Lindsay was in Seattle, and the owner, yours truly, was actually playing golf that day on a 50th high school reunion. So I just dated myself there, folks. And, the lid was off, and I had to confront this Karen the next day on Saturday. So, Lindsay, add to the story before we get into
Sure.
Prescriptions going forward.
Sure. Yeah. So one thing I just wanted to mention is one piece of information that, Mike, you may have just left out by accident, is that when we were over there, on Friday trying to find the problem, which was the first time this had ever happened in the 2 years that we've been managing this property, where the power goes out in these specific areas and we can't seem to locate where the problem's coming from or what's actually causing the problem. But while we were there on Friday, that's when the Karen started coming out of her shell because she was following around our foreman and our electrician and bombarding them with questions and really getting up in their faces and questioning really everything that they were trying to do to solve the problem instead of letting them work and figure out the problem. So her presence there started to become even more known when we went over there on Friday before our other employee went over there to drop off some lamps. So that was when we first started noticing this particular Karen coming out of the shell. And so
Yes, and I think
Yeah.
look at this podcast is not going to be devoted to ventilating and us crying on our listeners' shoulders about
right.
what we went through, because over the last 10 years, as we've managed our own properties, our own tenants, we've become more aware of how we have to handle the Karens or the Kevins that pop up. And it's been an interesting journey. And I think this latest episode prompted me to do a podcast about it, because it is one of the circumstances that you're going to run into when you do have short-term tenants as opposed to long-term tenants. And we have roughly 20 plus homes that we manage, probably 25 total. And out of those 25, probably 15 to 20 are short-term. So we may have 6 to 8 different people at one particular property. So if you do the math, you're probably looking at over between 125 and 150 distinct guests, rolling in there. So the chances are that you're going to get a small percentage of people that frankly are unreasonable. And this is the definition of a Karen or a Kevin. They're just unreasonable. They're looking at the glass not even half empty. It's empty. And there's nothing you're going to do about it that's going to, placate them. And so the question is then, well, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with a Karen or a Kevin that pops up? And what are some of your suggestions, Lindsay?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to I've certainly learned over the course of the last couple of years, specifically within the short-term world, and really working with a variety. I mean, we work with a variety of different people, from, tenants who you really never hear from. They check in and they check out, and that's all that you know. And then there are others where every other week something just pops up that they want to comment on, or sometimes it is a legit repair. But one of the first things that I would say is I certainly learned this when I was on my trip in Seattle, is really the first thing would be to stay calm and to realize that, and to hear them out on what they're saying, but also to not freak out and get into a tizzy. I remember before I really got more into this business, I would really try to bend over backwards to try to please this tenant or this client in any way that I could. And I've realized that really isn't the solution. So the first thing that I would say is you need to stay calm, you need to take a deep breath, and then you need to either call them back if you can, call them back, but just take a moment to hear what they have to say. And then take a moment to think about, okay, what is the solution what is something that I can do right now? And I think in the case of this particular tenant that we were working with, we knew that thankfully the outlets were working fine. The AC units in the place were working fine. The Wi-Fi was fine. It was just a couple of lights in the ceiling that weren't working. So to us, the second step is, okay, what is the most immediate solution that I can think of right now that's going to help this particular problem? You offer that solution to them. If they accept that solution, you move forward with it. If they don't accept the solution, and I think Mike should chime in on this one, but I've learned that if they say, nope, that doesn't work for me, then there's nothing more that you can offer them at this point. You've given them the solution. You've told them the plan of action. This is what we're going to do in the short time to help remedy the problem. And if that's something that doesn't work for you, then there's nothing more that I can do at this point.
Okay, well, let me add a little spice to that, because that all sounds well and good, Lindsay. But when you're dealing with the Karen, yes, being calm is important, but also having your wits about you is more important, which means number one is you have to document. Now, we've instructed our people who go over there, let's say our senior foreman and our electrician, whip out their phones, get the video going, and document the behavior of the tenant, because that's going to speak volumes, especially going to speak volumes when they inevitably try to tank your reputation on Yelp or Google reviews. I mean, they just can't wait to jump on you with those bad ratings. So documenting with video, documenting with email. So that's number one. Number two is what I learned parenting from my pediatrician that we were using. He said, no is a complete sentence. Or maybe I learned that from a kindergarten teacher. No is a complete sentence. Do not validate their unreasonable requests, because the more you apologize, the more you try to placate. It's just like throwing gas on the fire. Now, I hear what the tenant is saying. I understand what the tenant is saying, but this is not a life and death situation that a couple of overhead lights in a bedroom aren't working. That's not the end of the world. And I think it's often a shock to a Karen or a Kevin when you simply say, no, we're not going to be able to do that.
Right.
That's it. No. And we've got this documented. And if they want to, a lot of times, like this lady said, well, I'm going to just ruin your reputation on Google or Yelp. And when she said that on a Saturday, what I simply told her was, do you want to get this problem fixed? Do you want to be part of the solution, or are you going to be part of the problem? Because what she proceeded to do after I told her no was she ripped us on Google and she ripped us on Yelp. And I informed her that there's going to be no repairs until those reviews are taken down. And we're fully prepared to respond in kind to this irrationality with our own documented video and memorialized account of what happened. So one is document, two is being firm and being reasonable for yourself, not just trying to be reasonable to an unreasonable person.
Sure. Right.
Go ahead, Lindsay, add a few more things.
Yeah, no, I just, I think all of those are definitely 100% accurate. I just know that, speaking from my own experience, that, there's been times, hey, I'm sure we've all kind of been there, when, tenants who just get in your face, and I mean, really just lash out, it is pretty jarring at times. And that's why my first thought is, I need to take a deep breath before I say something that I'm going to regret. And yeah, so, hey, that comes from practicing yoga, doing meditation, to just kind of help keep myself calm. But I think,
Yeah, but Lindsay and everybody, look, it's not like if a tenant has a complaint, they're a Karen or a Kevin. And I want everybody to know that we've had some things happen where we dropped the ball. We've had bed bugs pop up. We've had where we had to relocate a tenant to another house. I mean, that's on us. They're certainly got a reasonable complaint. We've had power go out, which we can't control. And, we're working to take care of them. But the tricky part of all of this is when you get into the short-term Airbnb, VRBO, corporate rentals, is that you've got some people that think they're in a hotel. They forget that this is a house they're renting, even though it's a short term. There's no maintenance guy walking around the house that we can call over, especially if it's, a Friday night when people have checked out. And then we have to make a determination. Hey, is this a life and death situation? And then, we've got to step in and do something. If not, they're just going to have to live with it. And, that leads me to the other Karen/Kevin situation we had a couple months ago, where somebody was in the house, a real nice house, and they're paying, they're paying hotel money, or a little bit less than hotel money, to stay in this furnished house for a month. And near the end of their stay, the lady sees a mouse. And it's a Saturday. And our pest control people are orthodox. Okay, it's a mouse. She saw a mouse. And again, Lindsay happened to be out of town when she called. And Lindsay, you said, there's nothing I can do about it now. We'll have to address this on Monday. And what does she do? She turns into a Karen and starts bombing your cell phone, right?
Right. Yeah, something seems to be in the water when Lindsay goes out of town on the vacations.
Exactly. It's the rental gods, as they call it. But I had to step in because I was in town, and I ended up talking to the husband, and I said, listen, what part of this don't you understand? We can't get anybody out now. We can't get our pest control people because they're orthodox. We can get them out on Monday. And so he said to me, well, what do you want me to do about this mouse? I said, get a mouse trap. And pretend it's your house.
Right.
I mean, what would you do if it was your house, which this is technically for this time period, and you saw a mouse? And I basically said, hey, give me a break, will you? It was almost like, yeah, I hear you, but what you're asking us to do is laughable. Now, I'm sure there are people out there listening and say, oh, well, you could have done this. You could have done this. No, I can't do anything. I'm not an expert at pests. I can say we're going to quickly address this on Monday, which is what we did. And of course, we got the inevitable, bad review on Google or Airbnb or Yelp.
We actually, I'm sorry, Mike, I got to just say, we actually lucked out and did not get anything. We were thankfully fine. but yeah, I actually want to just mention something, because we often, when we have these thankfully rare Karen occurrences, there's always this period in our office where there's about a 24 to 48 hour, sometimes even 72 hour cool down / reflection mode. And hence, this is one of the reasons why this whole electric thing that just happened at this particular property over the weekend. Hey, this is the 4-day cooling off period where Mike and I and some of our other team members, we are digesting what happened, but we're also learning from this experience. And one of the things that came out of the experience with the family who had a mouse, this happened to be in the month of May, but what happened out of that is we learned that one of the biggest things that we started to implement is we started putting a section in our contracts that acknowledge what is considered an emergency, what is considered non-emergency / what can wait until the next business day. And believe it or not, ever since we've implemented that language in our contracts that our clients sign, we haven't gotten, with the exception of this particular person with the electric, we haven't gotten any more complaints. People now understand. It only took that little bit of language that people started to pick up on the fact that, as Mike said, they are not renting a hotel room where there's 24-hour concierge service maintenance people. We don't have that. This is a house that you're renting from a great operation, from a great business who responds to, problems in a timely manner, but we are not a hotel. And I think that when more of our tenants, the more that we have those kinds of conversations with people, and even just the language in the contract, I've seen from, speaking from someone who interacts with tenants the most in the company, that's been super helpful.
If you have any questions for us or topics you want to discuss, or even just want to say hi, you can email us at theclevelandrealestateinvestor@gmail.com.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of software updates that we've been doing for our rental business over the years. So this would be, version 10.6, coming after an attack by a Karen or a Kevin, or something that fails, which is a legitimate complaint by our tenant, that we have to then relook at our operation and make the appropriate changes. It's a very dynamic situation. People's expectations are going to vary based on who you're getting into, and we have to sort out what's a legitimate complaint and what isn't, and then do what you're doing, Lindsay, which is building in safeguards going forward, educating them on what their responsibilities are. And I think, look at the vast majority, the vast majority of people are, reasonable. I mean, you're getting back to them the same day. You understand the situation. You have a solution in the pipeline. And most people are going to say, thank you. I mean, especially during these times when it's hard to get the plumber out right away, or the electrician, or, any number of, support subs that we used. But, we're getting back to them. We're trying to take care of the problem. And, if it's not life and death, and it's something that really, a person, we're listening to them and they're just way too entitled. They're thinking this is the Ritz-Carlton. But we're making the changes as we go. So we're going to take a break for a commercial, and then we're going to get back with help from Yelp. Okay, we're back. So let's talk about Yelp. And for those out there who may have a small business, or in our case, we have a property management business, which is interesting. So we're getting reviews on Yelp on our property management business, right, Lindsay?
Correct. That and Google.
Right. And we haven't really been paying attention much up until now about Yelp, but we're going to start paying attention to that now, because we haven't really asked people to give us a positive rating on our property management business. Right, Lindsay?
On Yelp, again, I have to say on Yelp. On Google, we are thriving. We have a 5-star rating on Google. And to be honest, Mike, I don't really, up until I think with this whole Karen incident with the electric problem, it's in my opinion, I think this person probably just did a random Google search for for Reilly Properties, and then found whatever links allowed her to write a review, be it Google, the Better Business Bureau, Yelp. She just wanted to put it out there where everyone could see it. So, but Yelp, I gotta say though, is not typically an area, like when I hear how people heard about this, it's really not through Yelp. It's in my experience, it's mostly been through a Google search, or through Airbnb.
Exactly. I understand that, but I really think what's very interesting about it, because when she was threatening us by tanking our business, was almost, it was laughable because we have a very strong rating on both the Better Business Bureau and on Google. I wasn't really paying much attention to Yelp. I pretty much use it, if I'm out of town and looking for a restaurant, I'll take a look at it. But even then, I am very discerning about some of these ratings, because what I've started to see is, let's just say for a restaurant, which has got 4 stars. All right, now got to go through the all the different reviews, and you'll see 5-star, 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 and all of a sudden 1 star. And I remember starting to just look at the 1-star ratings and then find out who wrote that rating. And it was unbelievable. It was a Karen or a Kevin. When you looked at what they were, how many reviews they gave to restaurants, it was invariably, all they did was give bad reviews. And so here you've got a restaurant that's got 20 reviews, and 18 of them are 5-star, and maybe 1 is 4-star, and then 1 is 1 star. And so that lowers it to 4 stars. And what I took away from Yelp and the Reilly property, management business is that if I'm looking for somebody to manage a property, I'm going to want to find a company that's going to stand up to a Karen or a Kevin and save my client needless expense dealing with an entitled tenant. It was just like a eureka moment.
Sure,
So
sure.
I'm happy to reply to a couple of whack jobs, complaints about our service, and speak directly to prospective clients. No, we told this person no, and now they're stamping around their room on Yelp, rating us.
And if I can just, and I think that's a really great point, because I've dealt with, speaking from someone who deals with the Airbnb people and the guests who book our homes through Airbnb. We had an incident back in the early summer where we were notified. This is kind of interesting. We were notified 1 week after someone had checked out of our Airbnb that they were experiencing bed bug bites. And of course, as soon as I talked to them, they said that they noticed it within a couple of days of being in the property. And I spoke to the tenant and I said, hey, I'm sorry that happened, but how come we weren't alerted to this beforehand? So sure enough, we didn't quite resolve things between us. I think we ended up giving her a refund of a 1-day refund. But of course, she was that, she went on Airbnb and she wrote us a 1-star review for that. And she wrote about the bed bug incident. And I crafted a response that stated, we're sorry that this happened, but on the other hand, we were notified a week after this person departed that they were experiencing these issues. Had we known about this as soon as they got into the property or within a few days of noticing these bed bug bites, we would have taken action right away and moved them into a completely different house. And I wrote that response on the Airbnb review. And sure enough, we got a booking at this same property with someone who's currently staying there now. And if, she had said to me over the phone, super, super nice lady. And she said, hey, Lindsay, I'm really interested in renting this place. I did read the review about the bed bugs, but wow, why didn't she notify you, sooner than later? And turns out that this particular guest, she had taken the time to read the response that I crafted. So Mike's right. And I believe that people who are interested in renting, people who are interested in learning more about your business, they will read those responses. So if you're a property manager, if you're someone who's looking to start renting out your house and you happen to get one of those bad star reviews or even a good star, I've gotten into that habit where if we get a 5-star review, I'm going to thank that person and say, hey, thanks for taking the time to acknowledge our business. We're glad you had a good experience. People do read those responses from the owners.
Yeah. You know what? I have coined a phrase, which I should trademark, with our contracting business that we started 45 years ago. I learned a lot in terms of managing customers' expectations and listening and trying to deliver on what they expected. And usually the bar is pretty low. I mean, they just want you to get the job done, clean up, not make a mess. And so, we act professionally. We're not going to have a lot of complaints, but a lot of times you get entitled customers, just like you get entitled renters / tenants. And I remember after one incident, probably about 25, 30 years ago, we wrote out an estimate saying we're going to paint the house, fix the roof, but the garage is not included. And I remember the guy said, well, I thought the garage was included. I showed him the estimate. I said, it's right here. The garage is not included. It's not included. Well, I'm not happy. And I looked at him. I said, I don't care if you're not happy. Okay. What do you want me to do? Pin it to your shirt? Make you read? And I took away from that 2% of your customers can give you 98% of your headaches. And you've got to know how to deal with that 2%. And if you're confident that you're doing your best, that you're trying, you're making the effort, you're learning, you're growing, you're responding to legitimate complaints, then that's it. That's it. And you're not going to get whipsawed by people coming in and just dictating you. I mean, Lindsay, we were talking the other day with some people about, the economy and how restaurants are having a hard time finding staff to work on. And the reality is that a lot of people didn't like working at a restaurant because they were getting yelled at by some customers.
Right.
And the restaurant managers didn't stand up for them. And now, after taking a 6, 8 month, 9 month sabbatical from being a waiter and a waitress, people are asking themselves, why would I want to go back to a job like that where I'm getting yelled at? Meanwhile, the good restaurants that supported their staff and gave the heave ho to customers that were acting like, brats, they've got their people coming back and working. So, the customer is not always right. Sometimes the customer is an idiot or a tenant is an idiot, but those are few and far between. And if you have a good product, a good business, over the long haul, it's going to be recognized. And, and one final point about Yelp. Yelp doesn't care about the businesses. They're not going to block somebody from tanking a mom and pop business. They just want volume. And most restaurateurs and small businesses, they hate Yelp. They hate dealing with, being at the mercy of somebody's whim that they're going to give them a bad review. Final thoughts, Lindsay?
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. And unfortunately, sometimes that's the same thing that can happen when you're an Airbnb host. Reviews are huge. They are very, very important. And I would say that if you are new to the Airbnb world, or if you're about to get into becoming a host, or perhaps you're already an established host, I do think that if you are looking to get a good positive review, that you maybe think about reaching out to the guest after their stay and just, give them a phone call and say, hey, I just want to know, hey, how was everything? Was there anything that you didn't like, or any suggestions, any recommendations? Because those recommendations, hey, who knows, maybe that can help you out with your business.
Exactly.
And I think also having that conversation, you can gauge how that client felt. And then if you get a good feeling that, hey, they really loved their stay, they were ecstatic about it, everything worked out, then solicit that review. Say, hey, I'm so glad that worked out for you. Thanks for your feedback. Hey, we'd love a review when you get a chance.
Yeah, exactly. I think what's interesting when you think about Airbnb or VRBO and Yelp, you compare that with Uber. Uber's got a very interesting business model because it cuts both ways for the driver. I'm sure everybody remembered, what was those whack job girls that were in the back seat of this car in, San Francisco area, and they're coughing on this poor driver, and he had it on video. I think they arrested one, and she's, the other one is probably going to jail. But, if you're an Uber driver, you have the ability to rate the passenger, just like the passenger has the ability to rate the driver. And I know,
same thing goes with Airbnb.
My wife has got a rock solid Uber rating. She tips well, she's friendly, this and that. And so when she asks for an Uber driver, he's looking at her profile, and, there's a line out the door to go pick her up because,
right.
She's so nice. And, it's just too bad that Airbnb doesn't work that. Maybe they have it in their model. I don't know.
They do actually. They do. Where I, as the host, their protocol now is if a guest leaves a review for you, you have 14 days to either give them a review back or you don't do anything at all, and vice versa as a host. So if Joe Schmo were to check out from one of our houses, I could immediately put up a review of him, which he wouldn't see for another 14 days, or he has to leave a review. So we as hosts have that ability to rate our guests as well. And I'll tell you one thing, when I've been getting requests from guests to book our houses, the first thing I look at is their ratings.
Excellent. Well, hey, I take it back. Airbnb, you got your shit together. Yeah. And they are. They've been a good company to work with. Some of these other ones coming in like VRBO or, I don't know much about TripAdvisor. They're kind of new to the party. But you get a sense with Airbnb, they worked hard through the COVID. And, as long as, at the end of the day, as long as everybody gets a fair shake, that's what we're looking. We're trying to be fair to everybody here. And fair versus being entitled.
Right.
So there's, if you're going to be renting houses, if you're going to be buying property to rent, there is a lot to unpack that you need to know about. So this is just one facet, one chapter in the big book of the rental business. So I'll end on that note. Lindsay, thanks for your time.
My pleasure.
Don't go out of town anytime soon because we don't want anything else blowing up.
We'll see about that.
Okay. Thanks, Lindsay.
All right. You're welcome.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Cleveland Real Estate Investor Podcast. You can find all our episodes at www.riley-properties.com, or you can find us on your favorite streaming services like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, and more.